this doesn't mean that suddenly we're going to have, an MLS Cup competing team next year because we bring in 17 new players. Like this is going to take.
It's a process.
1, 2, 3 years. Yeah, this is a process. Now, that's not to say things can't get ahead of schedule next year and we overachieve. It's very possible. It's happened before. But I'm looking at this more on a 2 to 3 year timeline, and I just want to see progress. What's going on, everybody, and welcome to another episode of No Other Pod. I'm Jimmy, along with my good buddy, Chris Wright. Dan's not here this week. Chris, what's going on, my friend?
I know. It doesn't happen often, right? It doesn't take enough vacations for us to hop on together, but I hope he's having a good time in Disney, I believe.
Is that where he is? I know he said he was out of town, but I didn't remember where.
I think so. Sometimes I don't listen to what he says at times. I just kind of tune it out, but yeah, he's enjoying some hard-earned time off.
That's good. He needs it. That man's been through some stuff. So I hope he can enjoy some good rides at Disney. Eat
Absolutely.
some good vegan food. So, have you been to Disney?
I have never been to Disney.
Okay, I'm not sure how they do on the vegan food front down there. So
I'm not sure, but I was telling Dan. I mean, I know he doesn't travel internationally as much as we do, but I've been to Shanghai, Tokyo, Paris, all the places that have a Disney, international location, but I've never been to one.
You were just in China recently, weren't you?
Yeah.
How was that?
Definitely different.
Yeah.
Definitely much different. It was a great time. If anybody gets a chance, I absolutely recommend you go out there. Food was tough.
Yeah.
Not only, am I vegetarian, but just trying to I use, Google Translate. I'll take a picture of a menu or a sign and I'll translate it that way, but it's really kind of hard to know what you're eating.
Mm-hmm.
And then I'm just so used to pasta, burgers, American style food. Right. That it was kind of hard to really, you tend to miss our food at home when you're there.
You were in Shanghai?
Yeah. So I went to Shanghai. I flew into Shanghai. If anybody wants to go to China, it's the cheapest location to fly into. Then went to Hangzhou, then to Zhangjiajie, which is where they have the Avatar Mountains.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. And then up to Chongqing, and then Xi'an, which is kind of the cultural capital of China.
Yeah.
Then to Beijing, and then back down to Shanghai.
Dang, you got all over. That's awesome.
I wish I would have spent more time in certain places, but when you only have 15 or 16 days, it's tough to really hit it all.
Especially a country as big as China. I've been to China once when I was in college. I went to Shanghai and then Hong Kong. We were in Shanghai for 6 days and then Hong Kong for a few days. But I had the same experience. We got there, and of course it was a college trip, and we get there and our hotel's not quite ready yet, and it's attached to a mall. So they're like, here's some money, go get some food, kill some time. And there's a group of 6 or 7 of us, and we walk into a restaurant and we sit down at the table and we look at the menu, and for whatever reason, that's when the realization hit us. Oh, none of us speak Mandarin. None of this is in English. We don't know what we're doing. So we were pointing and trying to order stuff. And there was a man from Germany who was at a table next to us who was also fluent in English and Mandarin. And he took pity on us and helped us order some stuff. But it was, it was a challenge getting around, but it was an awesome experience.
And you didn't even have the benefit that I did of apps and, things that translate quite easily.
Yeah, it was wild. Actually, one of my favorite things that I did, I remember, is just walking around a grocery store there and just seeing the differences and how everything's set up, and the different ways that you can get seafood or whatnot, or just different products that they have that we don't have here. It was so fascinating. So
yeah, technologically they're far more advanced than we are in a lot of cases. But when you go to rural areas, it's kind of like our rural areas, not so much. But their public transportation is so good, man. So good. It makes me frustrated, but
yeah, hopefully we get some better public transit here at some point. But glad you got to go. Hopefully it was enjoyable. I'm sure trips like that also cost a lot of money, so I'm sure you're recovering from that too. I just had to do that with France, so
that's right. How was France?
Oh, it was great. Awesome. My brother got married and it went about as well as it could have gone, at least as far as they're concerned. They didn't know any of the stuff that was happening during the day. Shout out Eddie if you're listening to all the stuff that we figured out. But yeah, no, it was awesome. Got to see some family, and it was a great time. And then I did go spend a few days at Disneyland Paris there. I met my cousin there and had a good time just relaxing. And I'd been to Paris a couple times, so I'd seen some of the other stuff, but it was awesome. Good time. So got to see my brother get married, and the waterworks came out when he walked out for the ceremony, but it was a good time. So,
That's awesome.
yeah.
How different was Disney in Paris compared to somewhere in the States?
Oh, it's much smaller. So, I mean, you could, if you wanted to, you could get through, there's 2 parks there. You could get through both of them in a day, probably, and do most of the stuff. I spent a few days there, and I had a hotel, but I took the train back into Paris at night for like dinners and such a couple of times. But, I mean, they had totally different rides, or some of the rides even that they have there that we have here were vastly different. Their Space Mountain is totally different. Haunted Mansion, totally different. Big Thunder, totally different. But, yeah, everything was just very much like focused for a European audience. So, and the most popular character over there is Stitch from Lilo and Stitch.
Really?
He was everywhere. Every product had Stitch on it. So
I would have not guessed that.
No, it was interesting. But the one weird thing, which is interesting because you'd think Paris, great food. One of the biggest difference, I think, is the food at the parks at Disneyland Paris was terrible. Absolutely terrible. Whereas the food in like Disney World or Disneyland, like that's kind of a big part of the experience is people go there for like the food festival. So that was interesting, but it was good. It was easy to get around. Everybody spoke multiple languages at the parks because it's so international. So
yeah,
it was
good. Glad you had a good time.
It was awesome. And, while I was over there, I'm waking up at 3 a.m. to watch Sporting KC games or KC Current games or whatnot. I tried. I didn't always make it through all of them. I'd get through the first half and fall asleep, but I did my due diligence. I'm sure it was the same thing in China. It's hard.
Well, the time difference was 13 hours. So it was almost, the exact opposite.
Okay.
But you could wake up at like 7 or 8 o'clock and catch a game. The tough thing was getting through their firewall.
Yeah.
So like I tried 2 VPNs. I couldn't get through. So if I couldn't get through, it's going to be difficult to record. But I wish I would have been able to watch it. But we got the wins.
We got the wins. Yeah, that's interesting because, Apple TV, they talk about wanting this to be such an international product and an international deal with Apple TV. But I guess that's a big gap. If you can't get through in China, that's a huge audience that can't see these games.
I don't know if I think they're the highest populated country in the world. Them and India are the 2. I'm not sure which one is ahead at the moment, but that's a lot of revenue. That's a lot of eyeballs that can't see your product.
Well, especially when you have a player the caliber of Messi in the league or some of these other big name players, Son from LAFC. I know he's South Korean, but like these are big international names that are coming to MLS, and I'd like to think they can figure out a way for maybe there's a separate product in China where they can see it there. I'm sure, but doesn't sound like it's as simple or straightforward.
Yeah. And then on the current side, you have Chewinga Mbia who played in China at one point. So yeah, this opportunity.
It's crazy. We'll talk because I'm going to be on Currently with you later. We'll talk more about this later, but I took my cousin and her husband to their first ever Current game last week, whenever it was. So it was fun. It was a good time. So it's always fun bringing new people that aren't soccer fans. And I was like, you got to come to a Current game and experience that.
Yeah.
So
I'm curious to see what your experience was not doing media, but we can touch on that for the Current pod.
Yeah, we got lots of content to talk about the Current on Currently later this week. So make sure you're subscribed and listening for that. I'll be filling in for Dan, just like Chris is filling in for Dan here. But yeah, it's a good time. So lots to talk about here. Surprisingly enough, with Sporting Kansas City, considering that the season is over. I already have St. Louis fans in my mentions on Twitter who are I'm getting in little spats with them. I can't help myself. I don't know if you're on it or not at all, or you've seen what I started here, but there was a St. Louis podcast that they put up a picture of the final standings. Of course, St. Louis is in 13th place, Galaxy 14th, and Sporting last in the West at 15th, and St. Louis finished 4 points ahead of us, and they said mind the gap. And so I was like, okay, congrats. I quote tweeted it with a screenshot of the 2 games that we played, and I was like, congrats on being 4 points better than the worst team in the West that you couldn't beat this year. So because we beat them and then we drew at their place, so they're reaching for anything they can hold on to, and it's that they got 13th place instead of 15th. So it's just funny to me.
I'm glad to see that that's still going on. Even though, we're both not good this year or, quite terrible, there's still some entertainment value
there is
in messing with each other. So,
yeah, I mean, Dan and I even said throughout the season, if we could beat St. Louis, it'd be good. But I don't think I would have gone out there and publicly bragged about finishing in 13th place compared to 15th. That's just me. But
yeah, that's a very odd flex. But
I'm going to make some St. Louis fan mad when I say they don't have enough history to flex really anything else. So
got to get what they can get, I guess. I don't know.
They can. Well, they're searching for a new coach and everything too. So it's going to be some interesting times in the, Kansas, Missouri soccer scene coming up in this offseason. Lots of change. That's for sure.
It's just kind of crazy when you look back at, when they came into the league and, we had Johnny Russell and just how vastly different both teams are now. It feels like it was quite some time ago, but ultimately it was, a year or two.
Just a few years ago. And yeah, they're already on a new coach and new sporting director, and our obviously coach and sporting director and Peter Vermees is gone, and the new guy with David Lee coming in. So it'll be interesting. We'll see.
Yeah.
So, but before we go to our first break here, calling all Chiefs fans, you could be on the field at the 50 inside GEHA Field for the official coin toss at a Chiefs home game this season. Visit chiefs.com/GEHA now. Enter to win a chance to be on the field for a once-in-a-lifetime view of the pregame coin toss. Plus, you can score other exclusive prizes. Enter for a chance to win at chiefs.com/GEHA. GEHA is the proud partner of the Kansas City Chiefs.
I'm Brett Goodwin, one of the owners of The Learning Tree. The Learning Tree is a neighborhood toy store in Prairie Village, Kansas. This has been here in this location since 2000s, and my husband Alan and I purchased the store in 2023. Alan and I grew up in families where we've always wanted to have a business together. Alan grew up, for instance, his parents had a jewelry store. I worked in a local toy store here in Prairie Village when I was growing up. When this opportunity happened in 2023, we knew right away we wanted to contact them and pursue the store. We wouldn't have been able to get the store without the team at Emprise Bank. From the day we contacted them, they knew what we needed to do, which was very helpful. I would absolutely recommend the team at Emprise Bank to anyone looking to secure a business. We worked with Emprise from day one. They were extremely helpful. They were always great resources. We talk to them frequently. They know the area. They're very friendly. We know who we're going to talk with, and they know what we need to do. We hope we'll see you at the Learning Tree.
Now, Chris, I assume you've publicly said this. I know you're not truly a Chiefs fan. You're a Cowboys fan.
I have enjoyed probably the best run of Cowboys history I will ever have when I was 10 years old.
Yeah.
And that's about as good as is ever going to get for me.
Yeah.
I've been suffering since.
It's okay. I'm a Packers fan, and we've had our ups and downs and such, but did you catch any of that Chiefs versus Raiders game at all this Sunday?
I did, because I had Rice in my fantasy.
There you go.
So I was just kind of curious how he would do, and he did not disappoint, but Vegas was bad.
Vegas is so terrible. This is one of those games. It's hard to know, are the Chiefs kind of back to being the Chiefs, or is Vegas just that bad? So
it's a confidence builder, but you don't want to put too much stock into that one.
No, but your Cowboys crushed the Commanders.
Look pretty good. They're missing their top 3 wide receivers or something, but neither here nor there. We got the best offense in the league, and we could use a pass rusher. So if you know anybody who can rush the quarterback.
I have a guy on the Packers that, Cowboys might be interested in. He got 3 sacks on Sunday. So
we take 2 first-round picks.
I think I'm going to pass. It was the Packers stressed me out a little bit. Our kicker, he's injured, and so he wasn't playing. So we had a kicker who literally was about to be a teacher, he was lesson planning, and then he got called in Friday and was like, "Hey, you want to be a Packer?" And he's like, "Sure." And then he goes out on Sunday and kicks a 61-yard field goal, and it sets a new franchise record for the Packers. So
just like it was planned, like we all thought it would happen.
Yeah, I'm texting my cousins. I'm like, "We got a new kicker. Cut McManus. We don't need him anymore." So it's we'll see how long this lasts. But that's kind of how the Chiefs found Butker. He was like a injury replacement backup, and next thing you know, he's been around for years.
Yeah, Brandon Aubrey, he was, I think it was a financial analyst or something, and then he kicked in, I think, Canada or something like that, and then came in for a tryout and then he's one of the best kickers in the league. But going back to your Green Bay, I don't dislike Green Bay, but for additional reasons, I want them to lose so badly for draft picks, because we got your first, your next 2 first-round picks. So
yeah,
I'm really hoping you guys lose. Not that I dislike Green Bay, but for the next few years, for everybody.
Unfortunately, I think the Packers are going to look pretty decent for the next couple of years. They got a young offensive core. Micah's not that old, so
yeah, you guys are going to be set for a while.
I hope so. We'll see. Let's hope our quarterback doesn't go crazy, because we have a bad track record of that with our last couple of guys. But let's talk Sporting Kansas City here. Obviously, decision day. It was a late kickoff, 8:15 p.m. local time, because we're in the Western Conference, and on decision day, all of the games have to kick off at the same time, even though this year in the Western Conference, there wasn't a whole lot to be decided, especially for these two teams who had already both been eliminated from the playoffs. So they announced a attendance of, I think, 16,000 and change, which is obviously tickets sold, not how many people showed up, but better than I thought it would be. And there were a couple interesting things to take note of. Manu Garcia made a return to the lineup after being out injured for a while, played about 45 minutes. This was overall a relatively strong lineup for Sporting Kansas City, all things considered, that Kerry Zavagnin put out. I mean, when you see a lineup with Joveljic and Manu Garcia and Shallowy and Tommy and Radia, etc., is that how you would have approached this game to try to end an otherwise, difficult season on a high note, or would you have preferred to see more of the young guys?
I think for the sake of the fans, I want to see our best players out there. I want to see our biggest names. People showed up expecting, pretty much nothing from this game in terms of a result. But I mean, you just gotta, and some of these guys are going to be gone. I think you just got to come in here and bring your best lineup, try to give the fans the best show you can. And there's nothing to lose. You hope for no injuries, obviously. Right. But you don't got to worry about, any more games this season. You could play free if you're a coach and if you're a player.
For sure. I mean, yeah, you mentioned some of these guys are going to be gone. I mean, Eric Tommy, Zoran Basong, Nemanja Rada, Logan Ndenve, Alan Montez, Jansen Miller, Kyrie Shelton, John Polskamp, all those guys, Sporting, they're not going to move on from all of them, but Sporting feasibly could move on from all of them after this year, because they're either out of contract or they have club options. Now, obviously, there are some of those guys that Sporting is probably going to bring back. I don't see a world where James Miller doesn't come back.
Right.
I see a world where John Polskamp doesn't come back. I think those two are locks. The rest of them, who knows, honestly? It's anyone's guess. I mean, we can talk about that a little bit more later, but you're 100% right. This could be the last time that fans got to see someone like Eric Tommy in a Sporting shirt, or Kyrie Shelton, who I know has been a lightning rod many times unfairly for fans, but has put so much blood, sweat, and tears into this club that, deserved, I think, one final shot to put on the shirt at Children's Mercy Park and try to represent the club.
I mean, he's that, blue collar worker who will do anything the team asks, anything, regardless of how, it might not assist him in, going to right back. I mean, that was a big move. I mean, he did it anyway, just like I said, he's a lightning rod, but he's willing to do whatever he can to win and for the team. And I mean, you want to see that guy play one more time.
You do. And quite frankly, on a personal note, whether he's here or not next year, the dude has always been such a professional in the locker room. I mean, he came on here with Dan. I was gone, and Dan did a 30-minute interview with him all by himself. And I know Dan was stressed leading up to it, but Kyrie made it super easy. And anytime, no matter what's happened in a game or how Kyrie's played, whenever we've talked to him in the locker room after, he's always super professional, responsive, willing to talk to us, has never said no, has always been accountable. He's a good guy. So we'll see what happens. I know a lot of fans have their thoughts, but I just, Eric Tommy's the same way. Always been a professional guy. I mean, all of them. There's nobody that we're talking about here that hasn't interacted well with the media from my perspective. So I appreciate all of the work they've put in, even though the season has not gone how we had all hoped. So that's for sure. As you mentioned, this game wasn't the best. It ended 0-0. Clearly, there's not a whole lot of goals to talk about, but if you look at, I guess, if there are some positives that you could take, it's that Sporting, especially in the first half, did have a couple of opportunities. It took about 6 minutes before Manu Garcia found Daniel Shallowy in the box, and Daniel didn't quite get all of it, but he had an opportunity, and Daniel had a couple opportunities in the first half. Manu only played 45 minutes, but looked, there's a reason he's the DP number 10 on this team. So knowing that guys like Manu and Daniel are still going to be around next year, and obviously, hopefully, Dayon, and assuming he's not sold anywhere, does that give you a little bit of like optimism? I don't know if optimism is too strong of a word, but like some sort of hope to hold on to, knowing that, hey, a few of these guys, even though we didn't score in this game, still performed admirably.
It does. And when you take a look at any kind of attack, you want to have some continuity, right?
Mm-hmm.
And next year, Manu was dangerous in this game, or he was, feeding some good balls.
Mm-hmm.
Like you said, Daniel, he had a couple cuts to his right, just, was not able to, get it on frame. And he had that one where he kind of stumbled when he received a through ball, laid it off. It came back in the center, and he had a pretty good look and put it over. But it does give me some confidence. You can't turn over everybody. I mean, you just can't. So to have like Dayon, obviously, I mean, he's, the most exciting player we have on the team.
Mm-hmm.
But Shallowy, I mean, he's a leader. He knows what it means to wear a Sporting uniform, and he's going to continue to kind of bring that, what it means to anybody who comes into the club.
For sure. Yeah, he is not out of contract next year. I mean, all assumptions on the table, I guess Daniel will still be here unless they make a move for Daniel. I don't foresee that happening, but I mean, you talked about
you need 15 players at the end of the day,
Right.
Yeah.
You can't flip over, all 28 players on the, senior and supplemental roster. It's just, It's not possible. There are something like 16 or 17 players that are potentially out of contract or have a club option this year. Like we mentioned, not all 16 or 17 of those are going to be gone. Some of them are going to be re-signed and come back. We mentioned Jansen Miller and Pulskamp, but there's probably others who will be re-signed and come back in some way because it's just too much. But we can go over that in a little bit more detail here in a little bit. First half ends 0-0. I think, the first half was definitely the stronger of the two halves for Sporting. Pulskamp had to come up big a couple times in the second half. There was a weird moment where they reviewed after a penalty was called in the second half. The ref pointed to the spot after Pulskamp sort of mishandled a ball. I think it was a bad penalty call. It didn't matter anyway because I think it got overturned for being offside. But if there's anything that I can take defensively from this season, it's that even though, I don't think he's necessarily shown that he's the guy for the next 10 years yet, there is potential for John Pulskamp to be a, multi-year goalkeeping answer for this club. There were many times this season where he came up big and saved us points. And I think you saw again in this game that there were times where he's stretching out and making saves. And in an otherwise lackluster defensive year, Pulskamp to me was the silver lining, probably with Jansen Miller overall. I don't know if you feel the same way or not about how he performed this season.
Oh, I do. I mean, our defense was tough to watch at times, and he was one of the shining bright spots in that defensive with our defensive effort there. He'll make a couple plays. He mishandled that. He's done that in some other games, but I mean, he puts himself in the right position. He's fearless. He came out on a couple balls. I mean, he's a good foundational piece that whenever you can, retain your keeper when you have a bunch of turnover, to me, that's a big deal.
Mm-hmm.
To bring in a new keeper on a team that's just, you're going to see a ton of fresh faces. That's going to be tough.
For sure.
He's foundational to me. Him, Miller, Shallowy, Garcia. Hopefully they can retain, some additional pieces, but yeah, it's going to be tough seeing some of these guys gone.
It is. I mean, that's and I think something that Sporting we've gotten a little bit more used to over the last handful of years, but I think we've been somewhat spoiled over the last 15 years, if you will, and that we've had relatively little turnover for some familiar faces, fan favorites. It's pretty unusual that players like Zusi and Beasler and Sinovic and Roger Espinoza stuck with the club as long as they did, or went somewhere else and came back. And then following that, Johnny Russell, Tim Melia, Daniel Shallowy. These are players who, Benny Feilhaber, these are, it's not very common in global soccer that people spend the vast majority of their career in a league with a single club for multiple years in this way. So this is going to be different. For a lot of reasons, this is a whole different experience, not just for the players, but for the fan base, because, well, yes, there will be some familiar faces that are back next year. Daniel Shallowy is probably going to be the only, quote unquote, tenured Sporting Kansas City player, really. Him and maybe Pulskamp, the rest of them, Manu, Dayon, if Jansen comes back, these aren't going to be guys that are multi-year SKC veterans. So this is different.
Yeah, and you mentioned Dayon. I mean, who knows if somebody will come for him, right? That's, I think, what we're all kind of thinking, or at least worried about.
Right.
Yeah. But yeah, we've been spoiled, man. And these players have been spoiled having a city like Kansas City, who's always got their back. And, you mentioned the Beasler, the Zusis. I mean, those guys are Kansas City legends. But we're going to enter a new era. I mean, I know we're going to touch on it later. And we're just going to have to it's going to be an adjustment, like you said, for us, for the staff, players, and it's going to be interesting to see. Yeah,
it's post game, Kerry Zavagnin, he kind of talked about what you mentioned regarding lineup selection. He said, we really wanted to win for the fans to end the season in a positive way. So that's why he said, over the course of the season, we've seen ebbs and flows, some of the learning curves of young players. The young players are also psychologically and emotionally gassed. So that's why he went with a little bit more of a senior roster selection. But also speaking to the fans, Kerry said, the message to the fans and everybody in the club is that no matter who you are, no matter what club you are, there will be moments and there will be difficult moments. You have to persevere. And despite all the passion that you have for the club, it's about persevering through the tough times. We're stronger when we're together as a community, as a club, as a group. I think the storm is almost over. So who knows if Kerry will be with the club in some capacity next year. I think that's probably the first domino that will fall one way or the other this offseason that David Lee has to make. I think we all know how good of a guy personally Kerry is. He's one of the kindest people that's ever come on this show that Dan and I had a chance to interview.
That was a great interview.
Yeah, he's a super cool guy. And behind the curtain, hung out with us for another, handful of minutes after we stopped recording and just talked with us. He's a good guy. But from a soccer perspective, and we don't know for sure, David Lee's been pretty, silent in terms of what his specific thought process is, but do you think there's a chance that Kerry is retained as the head coach if he goes through this process, or do you think it's most likely we see a new coach for Sporting next year?
I think it's most likely we see a new coach. I don't see how you come over with this gigantic clean slate that he's about to have. Like you said, 16 players are currently out of contract.
Mm-hmm.
The coaching staff, he has so much, there's so much you can do with this team. Right. And I just don't see him retaining kind of an old guard in Kerry, especially after this year. I hope he gets a fair interview. I think he was put in a very difficult spot. Very, very, not the greatest talent on the field. Just came into a very difficult situation compared to the rest of the league. Sorry.
Sure.
And I think he, did what he could. And I think he should be commended for that. But I just don't know how David comes in and looks at the body of work over this past year and sticks with him. But maybe he will.
Yeah. He
better players. He'll, it'll work out a lot better.
Sure. He's said, David Lee has said that if Kerry wants the job, then he can go through the application process. So he's keeping his cards very close. He's not showing his hand at all. Kerry, like you said, he was put in a bad spot, and I think fairly or unfairly, Kerry Zavagnin has been synonymous with Peter Vermees.
Yes.
And so when he took over, I think a lot of people thought, well, we're just going to get more Vermees ball, for lack of a better phrase, for the rest of the year. And I think we did see Kerry try to do some things differently than Peter would have. And I think we saw him approach even managing a team from, a player relationship standpoint differently than Peter did. But I agree with you. I don't know that we can. I agree with you on multiple fronts. Two being, I don't think that David Lee can probably reasonably look at this year and say, okay, based on what we've seen, Kerry Zavagnin should be the head coach going forward. I also don't think that necessarily means Kerry Zavagnin cannot be a successful head coach in Major League Soccer. I think those two things can be mutually exclusive. He may end up being a very successful head coach in Major League Soccer, maybe for Sporting one day, maybe for another team. But I think one of the things that David Lee and ownership has to consider is earning the trust of fans back and building that excitement back up. So you're not getting 12, 13, 14,000 people in a stadium that seats 19,000. You're getting 19,000 plus people every game. And part of that is optics. And the optics of having this clean slate, like you said, that we've been talking about, and then bringing back a guy who's been involved in the prior regime, optically wouldn't look good. So
yeah,
makes it tough.
And David has so many connections outside of Kansas City. So I'm sure he already came into this situation with people in mind and just kind of how he wanted to approach it.
Yeah.
And I could be wrong, and I'm presuming here, but I highly doubt Kerry was, one of the, big pieces in, moving forward with.
Yeah, I'm sure you're right. I don't know. I've not been in a room when decisions like this have been made, but I'm sure, when you're talking to a guy like David Lee, you're talking about, if we were to hire you, what's your vision for the club? What are some names you're looking at? And so I'm sure he's got a short list of people that he's got in mind or has already engaged at whatever's legal within MLS tampering rules. I'm sure they're following all those rules.
I don't even know what they are anymore.
Who knows?
Make my best to go.
Let's take a second break here, and we'll come back and we'll keep on keeping on. But we'll be right back.
Chiefs Kingdom, I have got a question for you. What is your favorite touchdown? Well, for me, I can confidently say that my favorite touchdown, it's the next one, because with DraftKings Sportsbook, an official sports betting partner of the NFL, every touchdown could bring you closer to cashing in. From the first touchdown score to anytime touchdown props or the thrill of live in-game betting, every snap is loaded with opportunity. From spreads to money lines, same-game parlays, regular parlays, you want it, DraftKings has got it. Here's the best part. Bet just $5, and if your bet wins, you'll get $200 in bonus bets instantly. I use DraftKings Sportsbook, and you should too. Your team hitting pay dirt pays out to you. Download the DraftKings Sportsbook app now and use code KCSN. That's code KCSN to turn $5 into $200 in bonus bets if your bet wins. In partnership with DraftKings, the crown is yours. Gambling problem? Call 1-800-GAMBLER. In New York, call 877-8-HOPE-NY or text HOPE-NY 467-369. In Connecticut, help is available for problem gambling. Call 888-789-7777 or visit ccpg.org. Please play responsibly. On behalf of Boot Hill Casino and Resort in Kansas, fees may apply in Illinois. 21 plus age and eligibility varies by jurisdiction. Void in Ontario. Bet must win to receive reward. Minimum minus 500 odds required. Bonus bets expire 7 days after issuance. For additional terms and responsible gaming resources, see dkng.co/audio.
And we are back here, continuing to talk about Sporting Kansas City as we end the 2025 season and look to the future of Sporting Kansas City. Before we move on to exactly who's out of contract and who's not, there were a couple of interesting quotes from Daniel Shallowy in the postgame that I just want to touch on real quick. He was asked about David Lee specifically, as we've been talking about, and Shallowy said, quote, "He's spoken to the team. He's been very busy, and he will be, but I'm sure we'll get the chance to talk and connect and see where his head is at. I'm excited to see where this club is headed and what's going to be the next steps and to be a part of it." I've heard from multiple people who have talked to players that David Lee hasn't really had much of a chance to talk to individual players specifically. But we've heard people like Mason Toy say, I haven't had a chance to talk to him, but I want to be here. I want to be part of this rebuild. Daniel Shallowy, I want to be here. I want to be part of this rebuild. So it will be interesting to see. And you can tell even later when Daniel, he was asked about roster turnover and feelings for next year. And he goes, everybody's hopeful. Everybody's excited. It's been very heavy. Some guys will be here. Some guys won't. We truly don't know what's going to be next, but I believe this club will be where it deserves to be. So it's a weird headspace to be in as we end this season, because it really does feel like closing the chapter or closing the book on an era. And as frustrated as fans have been, and even we have been in, the past few seasons, and we've been like, maybe there's going to be some turnover this year. This time it actually feels different. And it's hard with so many unknowns to know exactly how to feel.
Yeah, because, like we mentioned, closing a chapter, moving on from kind of an old guard situation, it makes you very reflective of, these past X amount of years. And it makes you, to me, it makes me very appreciative that we got to have Peter, we got to have, Beasler, Zusi championship. And for many years, we were always in the championship running.
Mm-hmm.
We were always right there. So as a fan who's consistently in, having those opportunities, it can only make me very appreciative of the situation. But, I'm excited for the fresh start. I'm excited for something new. It felt like Kansas City for the, last 2 or 3 or 4 years kind of felt like we didn't keep up, whether it was the academy, whether it was talent, which is tough to bring people into Kansas City compared to, other major markets, coastal cities. And I'm really interested to see what David can do, given a lot of his connections in Europe and in the US, and how we can, leverage, our atmosphere and then leverage our training facility to convince guys to really give us a chance.
I mean, he's talked about how he wants Sporting Kansas City to be involved in the global transfer market. And that doesn't mean just buying players. That also means developing and selling players. Yeah. And that's something that Sporting has done rarely, but I wouldn't say consistently. So if you can be a team, and nobody wants to sell their best players, but if you can be a team that, Atlanta started to get there and they've kind of fallen a few steps back, but where young, talented players feel like I can go be at that club for somewhere between 2 and 4 years, develop, and then take my next step to a European team. That's a good place to be as an MLS team. That means you can get a pipeline of talented players and you can consistently replace the ones that you sell for hopefully a profit. So, and you mentioned he's got those European connections. I mean, he worked in City Football Group. And I think, I'm not a Man City fan, but City Football Group has their tentacles across global football in all sorts of capacities. So he's certainly got connections to try to work the global transfer market in a way that, to no fault of his own, Peter Vermees just never could.
And a lot of guys can't. And I think that speaks to what David can do and what he's bringing to a table. He's bringing something that a lot of other coaches are unable to do. And nothing against them, but it just makes him unique in that way.
Yeah, absolutely. I think if there is anything that David Lee needs to focus on outside of obviously number one, figuring out who the head coach of this team is going to be next year, and also figuring out, which we haven't really talked about, but is Mike Burns coming back? That's another question mark because Burns was not hired under David Lee. David Lee might have a whole different philosophy than Mike Burns from a roster building perspective. So he's got to make that decision too. But outside of that, number one priority has to be figuring out the defense, because Sporting Kansas City allowed 70 goals this year, even though we got our first shutout in the decision day game since, was it March or May or something like that. Sporting Kansas City allowed 70 goals this year, which is the most in the entire league. So this needs to be addressed. There are some potential pieces with, Jansen Miller, figuring out what you want to do full-time with Jake Davis, but it's almost a total rebuild on the back line. I think. And that, I don't know if you agree, but to me, that's his number one priority from a roster building perspective.
It doesn't matter, how many goals you're scoring. If you're letting in 70 a year, none of it's really going to matter.
Yeah.
Aside from maybe a couple, nobody on this team is above replacement. I always try and think of it, well, player so-and-so, will they start on another team? And in a lot of these cases, to me, the answer is no.
Right.
And like you said, it starts with the defense. I think you have to build from the back up. And I hope that's how he approaches the start of the season.
I hope so. That would be where I would start it. If you were to ask me where do we need to start, it would be right there. In terms of players who are out of contract, I'm looking at a list on Transfer Market right now. Two of the more interesting decisions, I guess, that you can make pretty quick are Alan Montes and Santi Munoz. Those were the players who were brought in on loan with the option to buy. And you kind of have to make that decision pretty quick. I don't know if you have any thoughts on, do you exercise the option to bring back either Santi Munoz or Alan Montes? I have some thoughts. I think, I know where I stand, but what do you think?
I'm a little torn. I want there to be enough talent to where we can just have some level of continuity, but simultaneously, if they did not want to exercise the option, I would understand.
Yeah. For me, Alan Montes is a pretty easy, thank you for the 4 months of service or whatever it is. But right. I didn't, and he wasn't put in a great position, joining this defense, but he didn't look to me in the, 9 or 10 games that he was able to appear in. He didn't look to me like I saw enough potential or spark that that's a center back that we can build off something. Santi Munoz is a little bit more interesting. He in that attacking center forward role, but he sometimes would play on the wing. Sometimes he'd play at the number 10. You saw potential there at times in him. You could see his creative spark at times. The question for me is, whoever this new coach is, do they have an offensive philosophy where someone like Santi and Dejan and Manu could get on the field all at the same time? Because if they can, great. Santi's only 23. Maybe you continue to develop him if the price is right. If not, then maybe it's a different decision. But some other players who are out of contract here, I'm just going to list them off, and then you tell me as I list them off if there's one or two names that pop out to you where you're like, that's really one I'd bring back, or maybe there's not. But people who are out of contract: Eric Tommy, Joaquin Fernandez, Andrew Brody, Logan Ndembe, Memo Rodriguez, Robert Volader, Nemanja Radia, Zoran Basong, Tim Leibel, Pulskamp. We've already talked about Pulskamp. Stephen Afrifa, Kyrie Shelton, Mason Toy, Jansen Miller, who we've already talked about, and Ryan Shayway. There's a lot of consistent contributors over this year, but are there any names on there that pop out to you that you're like, yes, bring him back? Or conversely, if there's not, maybe that's telling on its own.
Yeah, I mean, as you're going through those, I was thinking, whoever they bring in, will they be better than the player you're mentioning? Mm-hmm. Or are they better than a player that could come in? And for most of them, sadly, it was kind of no. I mean, I would like to have Tommy. I love to watch Tommy. He's fun to watch. Sure. He's one of our, per, FOTMob and Sofa Score, is one of the highest rated players on the team. Mm-hmm. So price
has to be right, though.
Price has to be right for sure. And, if Lee or the manager has a vision for that, I'm okay with it. If they don't have a vision, then to me, it's kind of, what's the point? And that goes with a lot of these guys. If they don't have a vision for them, then I don't want to waste their time and I don't want to waste ours.
100% agree. I think, we mentioned before Pulskamp and Miller. I'm interested enough to bring them back. They're both young.
Right.
Outside of that, like Santi Munoz, again, depending on the vision, maybe.
I like his position. Like you said, he could play anywhere. And
I like his versatility.
And if you're a new, manager coming in, having a guy who could play different, sides and just kind of flex around that, be a utility in a way. That's not a bad thing.
But I mean, some of these other guys, like there's my gut instinct is I want to say something like, "Oh, Stephen Afrifa, he's still young, he's got potential," and he is. I'm not trying to say he's old. He is young, but also, he's going to be 25 heading into next season. That's you don't want to be counting on a 25-year-old to be like, well, we're still hoping that one day maybe he hits his potential. By the time you're a professional athlete and you're hitting that 25, getting in, you want to be pretty confident that they are on the upswing. And maybe he hasn't gotten a fair shake, maybe not. But again, I don't know that I've seen enough from Stephen Afrifa to warrant coming back. And I think I'd honestly even say the same, frankly, about Logan and Denbei. I like Logan. He hasn't consistently played enough, and with the injury concerns, because he's been injured a couple times, I don't know that, like you said, can you bring in someone who can do what Logan did equally as good or potentially better for, in a more cost-effective way? Probably. So I think you're right. This does kind of just showcase the difficult position that David Lee is in, because some of these people will come back.
Yeah.
Not all 17 are going to be gone. Mason Toy is an interesting one to me as a veteran MLS presence who he'll be 28 years old, or he just turned 27. So he's 27 years old. If you can get him for a relatively cheap deal, having a bench player like him who can come in for the last 10, 15 minutes if you need a goal, I'm interested. But again, the price has to be right. So
I think you're right on some of it. Like, to me, it was consistency. Like, some of these players flash.
Mhm.
They just don't do it consistent enough, especially when we were a duck. I mean, we're dead in the water for most of the season. And just like football, it's your chance to put stuff on tape, not only for the team, but for the league.
Mhm.
And to me, nobody really just stood out. And I think that's kind of why I always keep going back to it. Like you mentioned, some of these guys will be back on the team. Some of them will be backups, or quality depth, or even having a better roster around them might elevate their play. And they just, might be the type of player that, the previous coaching staff thought they would be. But it's going to be very difficult for David, but I think he came in here with a game plan, and having a clean slate has got to be a dream for him. He can come in, set up his own shop right away, and it's gonna be tough
for sure. In terms of off-season deadlines and such, we'll just touch on this real quick as we start winding down here. Wednesday, November 26th is the club deadline to exercise options and submit bona fide offers to the MLS League office. So it may be that we don't have any roster decisions officially from Sporting Kansas City for the better part of a month. Now, they can do it before then. Sporting can put out at any time that they've made roster decisions, and here's who they've submitted a bona fide offer to, here's who they're exercising an option on, etc. So I don't think necessarily it's going to be all the way, a month and a few days from now until we hear that. But I certainly don't think we're going to hear anything until we get a new coach in place. I think that new coach and figuring out who the sporting director is it Mike Burns, is it someone else? That's going to be probably, if possible, before we get any roster decisions. Now, maybe, who knows? I don't know who Mike Lee's thinking of. Maybe there's a coach in MLS playoffs that he's talking to that thinks is going to be a potential candidate. And if they get to MLS Cup, then maybe they're not able to make that decision before November 26th. I have no idea. But November 26th, that is the deadline. So if we don't hear anything by tomorrow or a week from next week at this time, it doesn't mean anything regarding the roster. So
yeah. And when they announce it, what a way to soften the blow too, by announcing your manager, right? If you can announce your manager, then at the same time, or at least in the ballpark, I think that'll be a kind of soften the blow from some of these players.
Well, and if I'm a manager, obviously most managers aren't the ones making roster decisions, but they have a hand in those discussions. If you can get the right guy in place before that is finalized, it's probably a good thing to have that new manager in the room to say, hey, here's where my head's at. If you're David Lee, here's what I'm thinking. Is there anything obvious I'm missing, or am I missing the mark on any of these guys in your perspective? Then I think it would be good to include the manager and or Mike Burns or whoever the sporting director is in that conversation.
The last thing you want to do is let go of a player that your new manager likes.
Right.
Would love to have on the team. That's
right.
Not a great way to operate.
For sure. looking to MLS playoffs now, even though Sporting is not in it, but MLS playoffs start this Wednesday with the play-in games. We have Portland and RSL in the play-in game. For the Western Conference, we have Chicago and Orlando in the play-in game. For the Eastern Conference, outside of that, Western Conference teams in the playoffs. This isn't in terms of like standings or anything, but San Diego, Minnesota, Seattle, LAFC, Austin, Vancouver, Dallas. That's the West. And then Philly, Charlotte, New York City, Miami, Nashville, Cincinnati, Columbus. I'm not going to ask you necessarily who you think is going to win because who knows? I mean, Miami's
MLS
favorite, but anything can happen. But of those teams I listed, is there any team that you're looking at where you're like, if I had to pick a team to kind of root for, I'd rather this team win than any of the others? Is there any one here, or do you just simply not care?
Growing up in the Midwest, I can't go for a major market team. Like,
right.
I can't go for New York, can't go for an LA, San Diego. I don't know. I kind of want Cincinnati to. I'm kind of cheering for Cincinnati. I mean, they're playing well right now. I think they're 4 wins and 1 draw in their last 5.
Mm-hmm.
I don't want Miami to win.
No, absolutely not.
Yeah, I can't have that. I mean, I don't know. My chips are going for Cincinnati, but anybody can win. It's MLS.
For sure. I'd be happy Cincinnati, even though they're fans online, they can get a little spicy. But I wouldn't be sad if Cincinnati won. I think I don't know why I've always had like this weird little soft spot in my heart for Minnesota. I think it's just like maybe it's that friendliest rivalry, nicest rivalry. Even though even those games at times get a little tense over the years, but I love the city of Minneapolis, and when I went to a game up there, they were super nice. And
I'm with you on Minnesota. I'd be absolutely happy if they.
Yeah, it's that Midwestern team where they've sort of built something. They haven't just outright bought success,
right? So
I'd be stoked if Minnesota somehow came out on top out of all these teams.
Yeah,
but we'll see. I really don't want Portland. I really don't want RSL. And I especially don't want Miami. So if it's not any of even Nashville, I'd be happy if it was Nashville. That'd be kind of cool.
Yeah. Any team who builds their team the right way and just doesn't use their, clear and obvious advantage to build their team and roster and swindle the league. That's what I'm going for.
I do think it's fascinating that we have Cincinnati and Columbus in a Hell is Real derby in the first round of the playoffs in a best of 3. That's the series where if I'm looking at which one am I going to watch, that's the one I'm most interested in because they do not like each other. So
that's definitely entertaining for a casual, or not a casual, but somebody who's neutral. Yeah.
Yeah. Honestly, if there's something to look forward to as we sort of wrap up here, is watching playoff games, especially when they go to like penalty kick shootouts as a neutral, is very fun because I just root for pure chaos.
Right.
So,
and who did, oh my gosh, LA, when they Bale had that header in the last minute, I can't remember, was that Cincinnati or?
It might have been. I don't remember. Yeah. But
that was a neutral or, even anybody on this planet would have had an absolute blast watching that game. So
yeah, it was,
hopefully we get
some,
cool. Yeah.
But Philadelphia.
Okay.
Philadelphia Union.
That's right.
Who are the Supporters Shield winners this year. So
yeah,
they're going to be up there too. But Chris, you got anything else you want to mention before we wind down this week?
No, man, I think I'm good. I'm just I think like everybody else, I'm happy it's over. I think it's been a long season for everybody. And I think we're all ready for something exciting, some new change, a change. Yeah, I think we all just want a change, whatever that is.
For sure.
And hopefully we get more details as time goes on.
For sure. Absolutely. Whether it, whatever happens going forward, we know change is coming and we're about to enter into a new era and we don't yet know what that will be, but you can enter into this new era with some level of hope and optimism. And right now, quite frankly, that's all I can ask for. So
what's your expectations real quick before we hop off? What are your expectations going into next? I know there's so many unknowns, but just as like a fan, just a fan who's, showed up every year, what kind of expectation do you have? Or do you not have one? Or are you trying to go into it kind of blindly?
I mean, I think I don't have a realistic expectation. I don't think I don't know yet what I can say. I think best case scenario, if David Lee could somehow put together a team that like even sneaks into like the play-in game next year or like gets into the lower part of the playoffs, that would be such a huge turnaround from where we're at this year. But I mean, I'm trying to temper my expectations. And if there's a word of caution I would give to fans out there, I would say just because we have 16 or 17 players out of contract, whatever it is, this doesn't mean that suddenly we're going to have, an MLS Cup competing team next year because we bring in 17 new players. Like this is going to take.
It's a process.
1, 2, 3 years. Yeah, this is a process. Now, that's not to say things can't get ahead of schedule next year and we overachieve. It's very possible. It's happened before. But I'm looking at this more on a 2 to 3 year timeline, and I just want to see progress. So if I see progress next year and I see a coach that has a vision and David Lee with a vision for building a club, then I'm happy. So that's my non-answer answer. But best case, I think if we can even compete for a playoff spot next year and we're not already eliminated 2 or 3 games before the season ends, we're heading in the right direction.
Vision and foundation. I want to see us build a foundation. I want to see the vision of where, he wants to go with whoever the manager ends up being.
For sure. So anyway, you all, thank you so much for sticking with us through this season. This has been a weird one. This has certainly been one of the strangest seasons since Dan and I have been doing this 8 years ago. And I'm sure, Chris, since you've been doing it for a few years with us on the current side, this is probably the craziest sporting season that you've seen in that time too. So thank you all so much for listening. We'll be here throughout the off season. We're going to try to get interviews. We're still going to try to get David Lee. He's a little busy right now, so I don't know when we're going to be able to get him on, but we'll try. But let us know. What do you want us to hear, or what do you want to hear from us during the off season? Who would you like us to talk to? It doesn't have to be somebody even in the club. Maybe there's stories you want to be told from a fan perspective, or history of things with the club. We're open to anything this off season, but we appreciate you all. Make sure you leave us that 5-star rating and review on Apple Podcasts or wherever you get your podcasts. Follow us on social at NoOtherPod, at JCMack03. Chris, remind me your social handles.
Chris Wright 21.
Chris Wright 21. And yeah, shoot us an email, nootherpod@gmail.com. Check us out on YouTube, KCSN Soccer, or via the Kansas City Sports Network app. But until next time, he's Chris. I'm Jimmy. We'll catch y'all later. See ya.